Any chance Zeke plays week 1, in your opinion?
Well, before, last week I thought Zeke would have been there. And after listening to what Jerry had to say, now he's not talking about the first week of the season. He's fast forward all the way to the playoffs, which obviously is not guaranteed. And so I'm a bit concerned. Here's the reason why I think Zeke, they should have got the deal done last week. And obviously you want your players to be in camp and you want to help the football team. But for a running back, it takes you 10 to 14 days to get in prime shape for your season of workouts. And you don't necessarily need the games, but you need to work out. My biggest concern is that if they sign Zeke today, let's say they sign him on Monday, this coming Monday, you have a couple of days before the game, I wouldn't want to play him because these guys, running backs in particular, without that preseason camp, injuries, hamstring, that's the first thing that goes. You're talking about slow starts and you're talking about not being healthy. That's the one thing that you can't afford if you're going to end up playing a payer. If you're going to pay him $14 to $15 million a year, you can't afford to him to have a slow start or be injured. That's because he's that important to your football team. And so even if he came in next week, I wouldn't want to play him. But it takes you 14 days for a guy to get in complete shape. And right now he's probably not in game shape.
We talked with Tony Richardson about this yesterday. I was excited to talk to you about it today. How important is the contact? Marshall Faulk said he went down to Cabo. Zeke was not just sipping mojitos. He was also working out. He said his goal, Marshall Faulk said his goal was to make Zeke throw up. Couldn't do it. Meaning cardiovascular, he's in the right shape.
Yeah.
But Marshall said, but he hadn't gotten hit, and he needs to get hit. You know this better than anybody on the set. How important is it for that position to not have your first contact, as it's probably going to be for Zeke whenever he comes back, to come in the regular season, to have that contact in a preseason game or in training camp practice?
Two different things. Now, when I was a rookie early on in my career, Andy Reid ran some of the hardest training camps, tackle to the ground, live periods every single day. And as a young guy, I had to participate in that. And listen, I was ready for the season. With all that contact early on, you develop a hard shell on your body. Your body is ready to absorb that type of contact. You adjust to it. Then later on in my career, I was injured a little bit. I didn't participate as much in training camp. Now it wasn't until the first game of the season that I actually got contact. And it took me a couple weeks just to get used to it. It's not going to take Zeke forever. He's a professional. He's done it for a long time. But it's going to take him a week or two just to get used to it. And that slow start for this football team may mean they may not win the NFC East. That's why it's so important. That's, to me, why you have to have this guy in there early on, because winning the NFC East is not promised. Not getting the wild card is not promised for this football team either. That's why you want to have Zeke there. That's why you want to have him in shape and in camp so that you know what you're getting when you first start the season.
I think Jerry would be singing a different tune if they opened up with, say, the Rams and the Seahawks and, the Eagles and some tougher teams. They're looking at the schedule. New York Giants, Washington Redskins, Miami Dolphins. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go 3 weeks without Zeke, but I think they feel confident that they think they're a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
And if you're a legitimate Super Bowl contender, you should be able to beat those 3 teams even without Zeke. That's the first thing. So I think they feel like they have that leverage on their side. Secondly, we've all talked about how the offense is built around Zeke, and it has been. But will it be going forward? I'm not so sure, because with Kellen Moore in now as the play caller, I think they're looking at him to come in and really change up that offense, throw more down the field with Dak, obviously more pre-snap motion. That's deception, but I also think they're going to have some different plays too. So I don't think they're thinking we're going to give it to Zeke 25 to 30 times a game anymore. And I think they want to see early on, what do we look like in kind of a different system that is not as Zeke-centric. He won't even be there, it looks like. So I think those are things that they're looking at. And the leverage, Jerry said it a few weeks ago, it's going to swing one way or the other. If they struggle early, even if they beat the Giants and the Redskins, but can't move the football, their defensive wins, then they got to go get Zeke. But if they win and their offense is moving, I know they're bad teams, right, but then I think Zeke might have to come in and take second best running back money.
Jerry starts talking about leverage. To me, you have no leverage if you're Jerry. If you're telling me that you need me, especially in the playoffs, you may not need me in the regular season to win, but you definitely need me in the playoffs. To me, you need me as a player. So the leverage from that standpoint, to me, has been lost from Jerry and goes to Zeke. And listen, we all know how special Zeke is, but we don't know if Dak can carry this team. We don't know if Dak can go from 22 passes a game to 30 and be successful. We don't know that. We do know one thing, that when Ezekiel Elliott is in the backfield, you're going to give him 25 25 carries, this team will win, especially because you have an offensive line that you've taken care of. You have some guys outside that can run and catch the football, and hopefully your quarterback is good enough. But we know number 21 is good enough.
Jenna, before Zeke's holdout even started, going into this offseason, we talked about how the Cowboys this offseason needed to sign 3 players that they were focused on, 3 key offensive players. Those guys were?
Dak, Zeke, and Amari Cooper.
How many of those guys have they signed? None of them. None of them. Cowboys playing dangerous game here now.
Yeah.
Cowboys, they decided not to be super active in free agency. We'll sign Randall Cobb. We'll bring Jason Witten back into the fold. But we're going to basically, we believe, this is what the Cowboys communicated essentially, we are going to be good enough to compete for championships with the players we had on this roster last year with minor tweaks. Get Travis Frederick back, growth of our quarterback, a full year with Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott obviously being there. The only guy they've signed of note to an extension is Jalen Smith. And Jalen Smith, when you really get into the weeds of that contract, maybe took the bird in the hand, understandably, because he had suffered such a traumatic injury in college. He now all of a sudden has generational money, and he didn't want to risk it. But the Cowboys are communicating to us through their actions. They are playing a level of contractual hardball that they believe is in their best interest. And I get it. You got Dak evidently wanting north of $30 million. We don't know what Amari wants. My guess is it's around Michael Thomas money. And by the way, Julio Jones about to reset that marketplace. Zeke wants what Stephen Jones said months ago he was going to get, a contract that starts with Todd Gurley and then some. So you can see the argument on both sides. But for the player, the most important thing, even though we don't like to acknowledge it, is getting paid. For the team, the most important thing is playoff success. Eventually, we all believe Zeke's going to get paid. Now, could it be $800,000 per year less than he had hoped for? Possibly, but he's going to get paid. If in the fight over that spread, the fight over what ultimately matters but doesn't matter that much, $1 million here, $4 million guaranteed total, that's the margins we're in at this point. It cost the Dallas Cowboys, instead of being 2-1 or 3-0 through the first 3 weeks, they're 1-2, and that's the difference between making the playoffs or not. Or if you're right, they think they're a Super Bowl contender, fine. That's the difference between having a bye and having to go on the road in the first round of the playoffs because you're a wild card team. You only get so many of these seasons. You only get so many of these opportunities. You only get so many years with your quarterback still on his rookie contract, and this is the last one of those years for the Cowboys. That's guaranteed. That's where Zeke's leverage is, but it hasn't been enough because it looks like he is going to miss week 1. You had to circle back to your question. I think it's a 10% chance he's there week 1 because I do think he has to be signed in the next 72 hours, and I don't see that happening, and I think the Cowboys are putting themselves in a really risky spot here.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.